question we get asked fairly often is it true that there's a book from John Harvard's original library still in the Houghton Library collection? And the answer is yes, almost certainly. In 1636, a Puritan minister named John Harvard moved from England to Charlestown in Massachusetts to become the pastor of the church there. But he died of tuberculosis just a couple years later. And in his will, he made a bequest to what was then the college at Newtown, it hadn't even been named Cambridge yet, of half of the value of his estate in money, and all of the books from his library, about 400 volumes in total. And we know what books those were because there was an inventory made in the 1650s of the bequest from John Harvard. Sometimes very brief notes, maybe just like an author and one word of the title, but we have a pretty good idea of what the books were that he gave to us. Now, if we flash forward about 150 years to 1764, there's a massive fire in Harvard Hall that almost completely wipes out the Harvard College Library. There's about 5,000 books in the library at the time, and only about 400 survive. And those are because they were either too new to have been unpacked yet, or they were checked out at the time. There's another inventory made of what survives the fire at that time, and from that we know that a copy of a book called The Christian Warfare by John Downham, a Puritan minister in England, is one of the books that survives. And that's because it was checked out to a student at the time, a student named Ephraim Briggs. We also know from that earlier inventory that there was a copy of Downham's Christian Warfare in John Harvard's original bequest. Now, John Harvard didn't sign his books or have a book plate, so we don't have a definitive connection that this copy is that copy. But one thing we do know for sure about it is that it's been in the library a very long time. And that's from a little series of numbers that we can see up at the top of the page here. If you go to a library today, you'll find that the books are usually organized in either like the Dewey Decimal System or the Library of Congress classification. But these books are from a period way before either of those was invented. And in fact, the way you know where a book is on the shelf is simply by knowing that it's in bookcase number 3, on shelf number 2, and it's the 8th book along on the shelf. And in fact, there's a very early number written right here that indicates exactly that. So we know that this book has been in the library for hundreds of years from the earliest history of the library. We know that it survived the fire in 1764, and we know that it's a book that John Harvard gave us in 1638. So we think there's pretty good evidence that this is, in fact, a surviving book from John Harvard's library. We can't rule out the idea that there might be another one that we haven't identified in the collection that is also from John Harvard's library. But this is the one that we're the most confident about. And for many years, since the 19th century, it's been treated as an extremely special link in our history to that earliest founding of the Harvard Library. And when Widener Library was built in 1915, there was a special honorary procession to march the book in the front doors as the first book to occupy Widener Library. And now today it lives at Houghton.